Right now, the United States is quietly losing billions of dollars, and almost no one is talking about the real reason why, because while the world is focused on war headlines and market volatility, something much bigger is unfolding underneath, and it's happening in two separate ways at the exact same time. The first is at the government level, where deals that were supposed to stabilize global trade are already starting to collapse. The second is at the consumer level, where millions of people are changing how they spend, where they travel, and what they buy, and together, these two shifts are starting to reinforce each other in a way that could reshape global economic relationships. And the most important part is this is not speculation anymore. The data is already showing it. According to Bloomberg, tensions escalated sharply after Donald Trump issued a warning tied to the Strait of Hormuz, triggering a direct response from Iran that raised the possibility of a full shutdown of one of the most critical oil routes in the world. Markets reacted immediately, and within weeks, more than $2.5 trillion was wiped from global bond markets, putting March on track for one of the worst losses in years. But that's just the surface-level reaction, because the real shift started earlier, and it begins with how trade is now being handled differently. After returning to office, Trump reintroduced tariffs not only on rivals but also on longtime allies, and when parts of those tariffs were blocked in court, the approach didn't stop. It adapted. A different legal path, Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, was used to reopen pressure from another angle, and within weeks, investigations were launched into dozens of countries at once, including major partners like the European Union, Japan, India, and Mexico. Now, this is where things start to change, because these investigations are normally slow and highly targeted, but this time they moved quickly and at scale, creating a clear signal that outcomes were likely already decided. In practical terms, this turned trade agreements into something temporary instead of stable, and once that perception spreads, countries don't wait, they adjust. Governments that rushed into deals in 2025 are already stepping back, with some openly questioning whether those agreements even hold value anymore, and in at least one case, an agreement has effectively collapsed entirely. European policymakers are now treating negotiations as flexible rather than fixed, and that shift alone changes how decisions are made going forward. But here's where it becomes more serious, because this uncertainty didn't stay limited to trade. As tensions in the Middle East escalated further, several major US allies hesitated or refused to fully support potential military action, despite direct pressure. And that moment signaled something deeper, because for the first time, the issue was no longer just economic, it was about trust. And once trust starts to weaken at the government level, the effects don't stay there, they move outward. And this is where the second shift begins. While governments were still recalculating, consumers had already started acting, and the impact is now measurable. What began as a limited boycott has turned into a sustained behavioral change, especially in Canada, where the numbers are the clearest. Over the course of a single year, around 4 million fewer Canadian travellers visited the United States, marking a drop of roughly 22%, and that alone translated into an estimated $4.5 billion in lost tourism revenue. But it didn't stop there, because the trend continued into 2026 with double-digit declines still showing up in monthly data. And that tells us this is not a temporary reaction, it's a pattern. Surveys explain the shift, with a majority of Canadians saying political decisions and messaging made them less likely to travel, and a significant portion cancelling trips entirely. Businesses in border regions are already feeling the impact, with some reporting revenue declines of up to 40%, especially in sectors that rely heavily on cross-border traffic like retail, restaurants, and tourism. Ski resorts alone have seen booking drops of over 40% from Canadian visitors, leading to multi-million-dollar losses in specific areas. But this is where most people underestimate what's happening, because it's not just about travel. On the consumer side, a large share of Canadians have actively reduced or replaced American products, shifting toward domestic alternatives, and that shows something critical. This is not just sentiment, it's action. And once behavior changes at scale, it becomes much harder to reverse. Now here's the part that turns this from a regional issue into a global one. Europe is starting to follow the same pattern. In countries like France, a majority of consumers support boycotting US companies, and a significant portion have already taken part, while travel data shows noticeable declines from major European markets as well. The percentages may be smaller than Canada's, but the size of these economies makes the impact significant, and more importantly, the direction is the same. Globally, the numbers confirm it. International travel to the United States declined by over 5% in 2025, even as global tourism grew between 6 and 7%, which means the US is not just slowing down, it is moving in the opposite direction of the global trend. And by early 2026, that decline had continued across multiple months, with overseas visitors still falling. The most significant drops are coming from regions like Asia and parts of Africa, where double-digit declines are being recorded in key markets, and surveys show nearly half of global travelers are now less likely to visit the United States due to political factors, redirecting demand toward other regions entirely. And this is where everything connects, because what we are seeing is not one isolated issue, it is a feedback loop. Governments are losing confidence in agreements, and at the same time, consumers are changing behavior, and each one is strengthening the other. The more uncertainty at the top, the more reaction at the bottom, and the more reaction at the bottom, the more pressure builds at the top. And that leads to one final question that nobody can fully answer yet. Is this just a temporary phase driven by current events, or is this the early stage of a much larger shift where the global system starts to move in a different direction? If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating content like this.